Hi, my name is Ariana Dahlia, and this is Schroeder Library's library workshop. Are you info literate? So, what does it mean to be info literate? There are five main components of information literacy. The first is identifying the nature and extent of information needed. This can take the form of writing a thesis and then assessing what are you researching and what type of resources you need to be able to discuss the thesis that you've come up with, whether it's scholarly or popular sources. Do you need data and statistics? That kind of assessment. This may also take the form of creating a research plan or search strategy of figuring out how are you going to look for this information, where are you going to be able to find it, are you needing primary sources versus secondary sources of information, and all that kind of information. The next component is going to be finding the needed information efficiently and effectively. This can take the form of locating a book in the library using its call number, choosing keywords, using Boolean terms, and those different tips and tricks to be able to help you find the articles that you're looking for, as well as even choosing which databases to search in. Uh, Next component is going to be evaluating the sources that you found and thinking critically about them. This can look like exploring different resources on a topic rather than just picking one and going with that one, as well as an ability to analyze the arguments being used and research the claims that the paper is making. Next component is applying the information effectively to accomplish a purpose. What that purpose is may look differently depending on why you're looking for this information and what you're hoping to do with it. But it can take the form of paraphrasing research findings in an essay, incorporating direct quotes, referencing research to be able to support your claims. And the last one is acknowledging the source used, which will take the form of a works cited, bibliography, reference list, any of those different terminologies to mean citing your work, as well as it can also be utilizing Creative Commons, public domains, and fair use to be able to use different sources ethically as well within your research. So the first one we're going to elaborate on is identifying, which is kind of, again, what are your information needs for your research? Is this just I'm curious about it and I want to learn more versus a paper where you're going to need a little bit more scholarly sources? Uh, so scholarly sources are sources that are written by experts, the majority of whom will have advanced degrees. They contain original research. They cite other sources extensively through their work and contain a works cited section. They're going to use academic or complex language, which may include disciplinary or theoretical lingo or jargon. They will be published by a scholarly press that practices editorial review to ensure that content and context adhere to the expected research parameters and standards. And they are intended for an audience that's composed of researchers, scholars, academics, and other informed or specialized readership. Different types of scholarly sources are going to be peer-reviewed articles, academic books, and that kind of resources. Uh, some of the things you want to look for in scholarly sources to be able to tell that they're scholarly sources are, again, who's the author? Is it someone who is well known in that field of study, or is it some other person who maybe doesn't have the um, credentials or credibility of having published more in that field on that topic? Um, was it edited or revised since it was initially published? Who is the publisher? Is it a self-published item or is it published in a well-known journal, which will be where you look at the title of the journal? You ask yourself, what is the intended audience? Is this intended for a scholarly resource or is this intended for just kind of more general readership? Um, are they using objective reasoning or are there strong emotions at play in this work? what is the coverage like, writing style, and if you can find any reviews for that resource, especially if it's a book. That can be helpful to get a better idea of if this is a scholarly source. The alternative to scholarly sources are popular sources. These are intended for a more general audience or readership. They're written typically to entertain, inform, or persuade. Popular sources can help you answer who, what, when, where questions, which are essential for finding out information about current events or issues. They may cite sources, but they will not include a works cited section in most cases, and there'll be less sources cited than in a scholarly work. It'll maybe be one or two eyewitnesses if it was a event that was happening, but they won't be as scholarly as a actual scholarly source for this what they're citing. Some different types of popular sources are magazines, newspapers, blogs, podcasts, and social media. And popular sources can be useful, but they should be used sparingly. They can be good to help gather and establish background information or a cultural feeling on the topic. However, they shouldn't be used to defend your thesis or bolster your argument, and they should not be the only type of source that you use. So our next competency is finding those sources. Now that we figured out what sources we need, one way you can do this is by locating items on the shelves. This can look like researching in our catalog and finding that call number, which will be on our catalog if we have it. You can see in this image, it says we have the title, we have a little summary, and below that we have the call number available as well as the shelving location. This one is on our faculty display, and we can see the call number that we would write down and look it up. Additionally, if you're close enough to come by, you can also just kind of browse and find things through discovery of looking through our shelves and seeing what's available, as long as you know the Library of Congress classification number to have a better idea of where the topic that you're looking for can be found. Where you'll see our kind of Library of Congress, which is the classification we use, where if you're looking for topics on music, you'd want to check out M. If you're looking for biblical sources, you would want to look at B. I think probably BS is commentaries on the Bible, depending on what exactly we're searching for. I know that's one of the common ones for our students here at Concordia. But additionally, because we do have a lot of digital resources, this isn't the only way of finding sources. You can also search via keywords in our different library databases. To identify your key terms, you'll want to create at least a statement, which is just a concise statement about what you're hoping to research and the topic you want to study further. It can be helpful to phrase your topic as a question and then omit the non-essential words. For keywords, you're also going to want to make sure you're using the official word or phrases rather than acronyms. For example, if you wanted to research something related to English language learners, you'd want to use the phrase English language learners rather than ELL. Or if you were doing project-based learning, you'd want to use project-based learning rather than PBL. And then it can also be helpful to kind of generate some synonyms for your keywords, even if they're phrases. I like to try to get at least 2 synonyms for each of the different keywords or terms, even for my phrases, such as those English language learners. You can try and find different variations on that wording that will help bring back more results and more varied results of some of the different terms that different researchers have used. So once we have our key terms, we're going to want to use those Boolean operators and some other little tools to help us link those terms together. Boolean operators, as a quick review, are going to be and, or, and not. You can also use parentheses, quotation marks, and the little asterisk truncation symbol to help expand your searches. And's going to limit it by adding those criteria, and so it knows that it's looking for this and this, rather than any of our other limiters, where if you wanted to expand your search, especially for those different synonyms, you'd use or. So you'd be looking for um, dogs or canine as an example of some of the different key terms that we may want to look at. You could also bring in the term not if you're getting a whole bunch of results that are not what you're looking for. Maybe they're taking a different spin on what you're trying to research. Uh, then you could add that not and then some additional key terms to help weed out some of those sources that aren't quite what you're looking for. You can also use those parentheses to group terms together. I like to use them to kind of group my key terms together. I'll put one group of key terms with the or between the words, and I'll use and I'll have another set of parentheses and a whole bunch of other key terms for my second main key term. And I'll just kind of continue along until I've reached all my key terms where it's bringing back a sufficient number of high quality sources. We also have those quotation marks that are great for phrases, or if you know the exact title that you're looking for, you can put those in quotation marks so it knows this isn't just a list of key terms, this is an actual phrase or title that you're looking for. And we also have truncation, which just kind of fills in the blank of based on a root word. For example, if you did math and then put that truncation, it'd bring back math, mathematical, mathematician, and all those different variations off of that word math. So we have an example here. For example, if we were looking for a thesis on math instruction in urban primary schools in China and California, we could use that math with the truncation symbol, so it brings back all those variations, or arithmetic, end our parentheses, put and, primary or elementary school or grammar. You could continue on with as many other synonyms as you can think of, close parentheses, and instruction or education or curriculum, close parentheses, and California or China. So that way it's bringing back all those resources for either of those. You might be able to put and, but that's going to narrow it down probably more than you want between the California and China. Uh, but that is a sort of example of how you'd use those Boolean terms and other resources to kind of communicate to the database what you're looking for. So next step is going to be choosing where to look. You can have great key terms, but if you're looking in the wrong database, you're not going to be able to find the resources that are helpful for you. We have OneSearch, which is that main page on the library homepage. This can be a great place if you're looking for books, but it can also get a little bit persnickety when you're trying to use Boolean search and a lot of key terms. So if you're using more than one or two key terms, I like to go to some of our individual databases. Which one you go to is going to depend on your field of study and what you're hoping to find. We have EBSCO with whole bunch of various databases within that database, which is a great resource to go to. We also have JSTOR, another great one, a little bit humanities heavy, but there is also some of the harder sciences as well. There's Naxos, which is great if you're looking for music. Nexus Uni is a great resource if you're looking for business resources or legal sources. We also have the relatively newly acquired ProQuest, which is great if you're looking for dissertations. You may find a dissertation in EBSCO, but if you look closely, you'll see the journal lists it as just the abstract. That's a great way to find a resource and then take that title into ProQuest where you may have access to it. There's also Google Scholar, uh, not a recommended first step, but it can be a great follow-up step if you found a resource that you'd like to use, but you're not quite sure if you have access to it because it says request through interlibrary loan. You can check Google Scholar, and sometimes you can find those sources available open access through Google Scholar to have more immediate access to it. However, Google Scholar doesn't give you the option of limiting to peer-reviewed. So if you are specifically looking for peer-reviewed sources, it's best to start out with EBSCO or JSTOR or OneSearch or any of those other databases first, as those will better allow you to put in limiters And there are various other resources you can take advantage of with different open access databases that have been curated on our research guides available on our website. So once we've found our sources, the next step we're going to want to take is to evaluate those sources and ask ourselves, is this true? What is the purpose of this information? And does it accomplish that purpose? So, um, in addition to information, there can also be misinformation. And in identifying misinformation, it can be helpful to know the different types of misinformation. There's satire, which is meant to be humorous, but may sometimes be mistaken as true. Some examples of this can be taken from publications such as The Onion or The Babylon Bee, where they're meant to be funny, but if someone's not familiar with the source, they may accidentally think it is meant to be true. And this can cause confusion amongst people if they're unfamiliar with the publication source. There's also false context, which is where images, quotes, or other pieces of information are taken into a new false context to change the meaning. This can look like repurposing of content in a misleading way. There's imposter content, which is the use of branding to trick people into believing content is authentic. It could be helpful to counteract this by making sure you're extra cautious of making sure journal titles and web links are spelled correctly as you're navigating to the different sources that you're looking into. There's also manipulated content, which can be one of the hardest to identify because this is misinformation where something has been altered from the original image, such as an image that has had something added or removed during using photo editing tools. There's all sorts of video software where you can use it to create videos that look very real but are not accurate. And so being able to kind of spot those can be helpful in identifying, is this information accurate or not? And then the last one is fabricated content, which is just entirely made up but still intended to look real. It can sometimes utilize that false content or false context and manipulated content in their purpose of entirely fabricating a story. And then can also be helpful to look at the purpose and type of information. I have this as a what looks like kind of one-to-one, but it's not necessarily always one-to-one. This is a sort of just kind of overgeneralization. But if it's specifically looks like it's meant to entertain, it's probably going to be entertainment and therefore not necessarily a scholarly source. If it looks like it's trying to sell you something, a lot of times that's going to be an advertisement. Um, and you're going to want to be wary of anything that seems like it's trying to sell you something, even if it claims to be scholarly. It may be something that's trying to persuade you. This will often be opinion, but can sometimes be advertisement or any other information, depending on how it's exactly being used. Anything that seems like the strong and main purpose is to provoke, you're going to want to be cautious because it may be propaganda. Uh, and then another purpose is just documentation. Documentation provides a type of information called raw information. It's important to be cautious of this because it may be missing context and therefore become easy to be misinterpreted and provide false information, even though it is just outright documenting an option or event that's happening. And then our last one is the purpose is to inform. This is most commonly associated with news, at least in its most ideal form. Um, Depending on the news outlet and your own personal opinions, that may vary depending on the news outlet. But in its most ideal form, the purpose of news is to inform. So, what to remember when evaluating sources? We have two different tests that you can use. This one's my personal favorite. It's called SIFT, which is a acronym for Stop, Investigate the Source, Find Better Coverage, Trace the Claims. Uh, this is also a practice called lateral reading. where you find one source and then you go find similar sources. Maybe you double check some of those citations that they made and you assess, is this or was this taken out of context, or is this following the appropriate context and spirit that it was originally published in? Um, are these actual citations, especially if you're using ChatGPT or any other generative AI? There have been numerous cases where they have hallucinated sources and facts, where they'll come up with their own citation, but if you actually try to find the citation, it doesn't exist. So that's where you'll want to kind of trace those claims. And if you're finding a source that has a lot of hallucinated sources, you might not want to trust that source. You might want to find some better sources, uh, as well as just kind of finding that better coverage if it's out there, to kind of compare how well does this one do by, again, reading multiple sources on that topic to compare what they say. Are there contradictory claims? Are they both in support of the topic and are in agreement? Another test, and the more commonly known test, is the CRAP test, which is also an excellent tool. It's going to look for currency, which is timeliness of the information. Was it published this year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20, 50? How recent is it? Relevancy of the importance of the information for your needs. Basically, does this align with what you're trying to research and what the title implies it is about? Look at the authority, which is going to be the source of the information. This will be the author and perhaps the publishing journal, as well as you're going to want to look for accuracy of the reliableness of the or truthfulness or correctness of the content. Are these things that are accurate or at least look accurate? Or are they things that are very clear to be able to tell are either not accurate or no longer accurate, depending on how long ago the resource was published? And then also the purpose of what is the reason of that information exists. Might there be some biases in based on what that purpose is, especially if they're trying to sell you something or persuade you of something? Are these informations coming from a truthful, neutral place, or are they swayed by any biases? Uh, in addition to doing your own, you can also make use of different fact-checking sites. Some of the ones that are well known are SourceWatch, PolitiFact, Nodes of Science, FAIR, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Snoops, and Open Secrets. However, when using these sources, be sure you do your own due diligence as well, because a lot of these are going to use algorithms, and algorithms can still be biased, and may involve different things that have snuck in during their training or use, that they may not even realize are biases, or even if it is human fact checked, the human may have biases as well. So always be sure to kind of double check, do your own due diligence. Don't just take it as this one source said yay, so we're going to go with it. But make sure you do your own fact checking as well. But each site finding multiple sources that are all agreeing as well, if that can also be helpful. So last, we are going to look at applying those sources. It's basically just kind of either in the form of summarizing your research or quoting directly and incorporating it into your essay. This can be building off information. You don't want to just restate what they're saying, but you do want to fully integrate it into the paragraph. Our own writing studio had a great article on kind of having better integration by not just dropping quotes in, like you'll see from this example, but actually properly integrating them into their sentence structure so that it flows a little bit better. And lastly, when you're citing or summarizing, you also want to make sure you're acknowledging the work that's been done. This will look like a properly formatted citation. I've heard rumors that some people think you can just use the web link as a citation. Uh, please don't do that. Make sure you have sufficient information where someone else could find that resource that you're looking to use. Haven't heard of it being a common thing, but you do want to make sure that it is properly formatted. Here's my own kind of example based on the blog I cited in this presentation. Uh, and you also want to make sure you're using consistent formatting in that, whether you're using MLA, Chicago, APA, whatever source your professor has recommended or requested you use. So, any questions? All right. If there are no questions, I have my own questions real quick for anyone who has time for a round of testing your knowledge. And as usual, there are prizes if you'd like to stop by the library afterwards. Give it one more minute unless I hear back that no one's in a position to be able to join. 'Cause if you're in an unsafe situation to be able to join, such as in a car, please don't worry about joining. All right. Unless I hear that anyone else is trying to get in, then I will go ahead and start. Feel free to play along from home. So our first question is, which is not one of the 5 components of information literacy? Is it find, apply, share, or acknowledge? That is correct. Sharing is not officially one of the 5 components of information literacy. So, which is not a method of evaluating mentioned in the library workshop on this topic? Is it the CRAP test, SIFT, trusting the author, or lateral reading? And that is correct. We hope we can trust the author, but we do still want to do our due diligence of uh, critically evaluating their work and holding them to those standards of information literacy. So this is a true or false question. Dropped quotes are a good way to apply sources in your research. Is it true or false? That one is false. You're always going to want to make sure you're integrating those quotes if you are using quotes into your research so it flows better. Which of these can help you find a book on the shelf? Call number, the color of the cover, the ISBN number, or the library catalog? And the correct answer was, or actually two different correct answers, is the call number or library catalog. Both of those are ways that you can help find a book on the shelf if you know the topic your book you're looking for. So, popular sources can help you establish a cultural feeling on a topic, true or false. Is true. That is one of the ways popular sources can still be used in academic research. But again, you do want to be wary and limit your use of popular sources when researching. So, which is not a scholarly source? Is it peer reviewed articles, books written by experts in the field being written about, articles from academic journals, or podcasts? That is correct. While podcasts can be scholarly content, they are not officially considered a scholarly source, just because there's not usually that kind of peer review process of being checked and published. It's easy to self publish a podcast, or at least more easy than publishing an article or book. Next question is which is not part of finding your sources? Is it using Boolean operators and or a not, choosing keywords, deciding where to look, or using acronyms? And that is correct again. Do not want to use acronyms when you're using or choosing your key terms and trying to find sources. Uh, Scholarly practice is you want to use the full key terms to make sure they're more easily locatable, especially since acronyms may have multiple meanings depending on the context that they're put in. Another true or false question. You don't have to cite a source if you add the web link. True or false? And that is, again, false. You do still need to cite your source. Some citations may include the web link, but you are still going to want to have the rest of that information as required for proper citation. So, which is not a way to apply sources? Is it by reading them, summarizing them, quoting directly, or using an image, chart, graph, or other visualized data set? That is correct again. Reading is a great way to start analyzing the source, but it's not officially considered applying the source. True or false? Or second to last question. There are sites that you can use to help assess the reliability of your sources. True or false? That one is true. There are sources we went over where you can kind of look and get a better idea of what other people are saying about that source. And our last question, another true or false. Fact-checking sites are never biased and can be 100% trusted. Is that true or false? That is false. Algorithms can be biased, whether it's using an algorithm, as well as even if it's checked by people. People can also be biased, even if it's an unconscious bias. So we're going to want to be aware of that when we're looking at what other people have said about a source. and kind of do our own research to decide, um, do we agree with them? Do we not agree with them? And why? Being aware of our own biases as well. So congratulations to InfoLit. Go ahead and stop by and we will get you your prize. But this brings us to the end of our recording. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us at librarian@cui.edu. And we hope to see you at our next workshop.